right, so should we dive in? Let's get started. We're live everywhere.
Let's go.
Awesome. Well, welcome back everyone to another episode of the Health Made Simple show. I'm here with our host, Dr. Bart Precourt, who has been a healthcare practitioner for over 20 years, practicing a range of modalities, including chiropractic, kinesiology, acupuncture, functional nutrition and supplementation, and lab testing, all out of his clinic, Balanced Health Studio in Seagrove Beach, Florida, as well as virtually now all over the world, right here using Zoom. He's also the creator of the Health Edge program, which is a cutting edge program for entrepreneurs and executives wanting to take their health to the next level. So he works with celebrities and athletes all around the world. And tonight we get to dive into some of these strategies to help. We've all got a family member at least that's on some sort of medication. We all do.
Yeah, absolutely. We all do. And what's interesting tonight, some of the ones I'm going to talk about, I think there's a new number one med out there, which we're going to tackle, that meaning the most popular, at least here in the States. I knew it was climbing up the ladder, but surprisingly, it's number one, other than probably still on, well, I take that back. There's one that's been number one forever, and it's been like Vicodin, all of the pain meds, but they're on somewhat of a decline because there's been kind of a crackdown in our country, which has been good, because there's so many addictions to that. So there's like a new number one, and we're going to talk about that one tonight. I think it'll surprise people. So, absolutely. This is one of the ones where this information, and if nothing else, Karen, we'll do a deep dive into the benefits of all these different vitamins and nutrients. So that's the fun part. I think I'm looking forward to most, to talk about things like, what does zinc really do in your body? Well, how about calcium? What does folic acid do? And when you hear those things, it really gives, every time I do it, quite frankly, it gives me this like whole new respect and like this like aha moment for this God's garden thing, for just like how powerful nature is, how amazing our bodies are, and that the more we can give them the tools that they need, the more incredible they can be for us. They can kind of show us what they can do. And then in the event we're doing something that is taking away some of the tools, but we don't know it, could we give those tools back so they can continue to be awesome? So I'm ready to roll when you are.
Love it. Yeah, let's dive in. What's the first one we want to talk about?
So I tell you what, let's talk about, there's like a group of blood pressure medications. Okay. So
yeah, it's a big one. A lot of our population is on blood pressure medications.
Yeah, huge. And now, but they're different. And again, I'm not coming off so just a couple of disclaimers here. One, I'm not a drug expert, right? Half these names, I can't tell you the real, I can't pronounce half the names. That's.
I definitely can't pronounce half the names. Yeah.
That's one. And I'm definitely not recommending, any, telling you to come on or off of medications. I'm literally just kind of like trying to introduce you to a possibility that you can use. It could be an and world that we can, be on something, understand what it's doing, the down regulation of the body, and then, upregulate it so we can just keep leveling up. But blood pressure medications, they're a little bit different what each one does, Karen. So I want you, let's think about the ACE inhibitors, the calcium blockers, and then the beta blockers. Sometimes people are on all three. So yeah. So, and they all have little different and again, I'm not going to go into the side effects as much as I really want to talk about the nutrient deficiencies that they have. So the ACE inhibitors primarily are going to inhibit your body from absorbing zinc and calcium. Well, really zinc and sodium, and calcium is going to be in there in just a moment. But so an ACE inhibitor, zinc and sodium. And why is that a big deal? So when we think about zinc, so I automatically, a lot of times when I think of like high blood pressure medications, I don't know why, but I think of guys, because I've seen so many guys. It's almost like if you're 50 plus years old, you're on a blood pressure medication. It shouldn't be. It's not genetic. It's none of that stuff. It just happens. And the bummer about that, as soon as I hear that they're on an ACE inhibitor, I think, man, it's inhibiting the body's ability to absorb zinc. And that is the number one nutrient that men especially need for their prostate. And so there's like, this is what I'm talking about, leveling up. So if you know, like your dad, your husband, your grandfather, whatever is on an ACE inhibitor, we want to make sure that his zinc levels are good and that he's always, getting something that has zinc in it. So that's what the ACE inhibitor does. When it comes
What do we do for zinc though? Do we need to take a zinc supplement?
certainly, so I guess any of these tonight that I talk about, that's certainly an option. Now zinc comes in the challenge. So a lot of these times we're going to have to supplement, because a lot of what we'll talk about tonight is that these meds will inhibit the absorption. So we kind of got to go beyond the ordinary. So I'd love to just continue to give referrals when it comes to like just eat oysters and get a lot of zinc, but it's probably not going to be enough. So if we're on a particular medication, it's kind of like this. Oh, we're on this medication. Let's balance it out with making sure we use a supplement. So in that scenario, typically I use something called zinc liver chelate. It's real simple, real easy, low dose in it, probably 2 a day. But listen, for the most part, everyone that's listening to this is already on zinc because we just had the year from where, right? And you already had taken vitamin C, zinc, and and D. So a zinc, if you're on an ACE inhibitor, that would be something really good. And then sodium as well. But I wouldn't recommend necessarily a sodium supplement, but adding a little bit of extra sea salt into the diet, not avoiding it. Not so, yes, get rid of the table salt. We don't want that kind of sodium, but the regular sodium that might come in, like, even vegetables and stuff like that, that you can get naturally. Because remember, sodium is part of our electrolytes. And you're going to hear me talk about that a lot with all of these heart medications, which is kind of crazy. So our primary electrolytes, remember, just because I'm going to repeat these over and over again tonight. So when we think about electrolytes, here's what I want everyone to think about. One, electrolytes is the number one cause, a deficiency in electrolytes, number one cause of body fatigue, number one cause. Because if they're not in balance, if we don't have them, your body doesn't bring nutrients, doesn't have electrical charges going to our muscles, going to our brain, going to our organs, going to our eyes. So the moment we get out of balance with electrolytes, we start going downhill. So here we have an ACE inhibitor, and that's going to deplete our ability for sodium. So the primary ones, see if I remember all these: magnesium, sodium, potassium, chloride, calcium, and then also phosphorus. So there's 6. I usually talk about 5, but the phosphorus is the 6th. And that balance of those, they're really not all the same. They have all different levels, but they work in harmony to give your body energy. So, and I think I've spoken about it here in the show. During my day, like a day like today, I was in clinic. I see my peeps all day long, and I don't eat during the day, but I will get some electrolytes. And it's like I'm fully charged when that happens. So keep in mind as I go through this, especially if you or anyone is on a heart medication, because a lot of them inhibit electrolytes, which are so important for heart health. It's kind of weird. So, all right. So that's the ACE inhibitor. If you go to...
And often just on sodium, I mean, you're told to avoid sodium, but potentially, like when people have high blood pressure and things like that. But a lot of people, I guess, that are on high blood pressure medication might be shouldn't say that, but there are a lot of people, if you're eating processed foods or things like that, then you're getting a different type of sodium. Like we're talking about, once you've cut out that, you need to add some of the good stuff in.
Yeah. And that's an important distinction right there, Karen. So we're told to avoid sodium, which is like table salt. And you hit it right on the head. We really should be avoiding processed foods that have the added salt, that white, the pretty white salt that we see on our...
Even bread is so high in, like, I don't know, should we call it bad sodium, but like just table salt, really.
Yeah, sodium chloride, that's what that is. So so we want to watch all those things if you have any kind of heart condition, because what it does, it throws off the sodium potassium pump. And that is what, we retain fluids, we don't retain fluids, and that's what also make that electrical impulse for the heart. So let's make sure that when we talk sodium, we're really talking about, if we're going to add it, it's through sea salt, and it's through, natural, balanced out electrolytes, et cetera. So that's the ACE inhibitors, it's sodium, and that's zinc. With the beta blockers, here's an interesting one. So beta blockers inhibit melatonin.
Oh. Nobody wants to inhabit melatonin, really.
And I'm going to circle back about how we address melatonin, because I'm not a huge fan, Karen, of just supplementing.
Okay.
If we do, got to be very, very, very careful and understand how and why. I'd rather make sure that we have a robust production available through good gut health, and making sure some other things are in line, like we're going to bed on time, because melatonin is a hormone. And, if you're taking melatonin, like, you're on hormone replacement therapy, like you're replacing it. So we want to be just gentle with that. Oddly enough, and this is where it gets a little funky with a lot of these heart meds, and we're going to talk about cholesterol medication in just a moment here. With the beta blockers, it also inhibits CoQ10 production. And CoQ10, which I'm not going to say the whole word, it's just CoQ10, is really, really important. It is considered the heart protector. And inhibiting CoQ10, a couple things happen. One, we can get muscle wasting. It plays a big role in our muscles. It also acts as an antioxidant. So, that's part of the heart health part of it, that it acts as an antioxidant. And oddly enough, there's certain studies that are also showing that CoQ10 can help with carbohydrate and lipid breakdown. So again, science is always very, very slow, and we're learning more and more. But clinically, we know that people that are on CoQ10, especially if they're on medications, seem to really balance out some of the side effects.
So what's a good supplement for CoQ10? Have you got a standard process one?
Not a standard process one. Standard process does have one, and I really do like it. It's called Cellular Vitality. Okay. The only challenge, and this is just for ease sake, that it's a phenomenal product, and it's very synergistic with all the other herbs and vitamins that you want to come with it. But you need 6 a day. Okay. Where you can take, I do use, in this scenario, I use another company called Thorne. It's a CoQ10 product, and we have it in our office, and it's for people that are on these kind of medications. Typically, I don't use that much of it unless they're on this one or another medication that I'm going to talk about in just a moment. And we want about 200 milligrams a day, which is usually 1 to 2 capsules. Easy breezy.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they can just reach out to the studio if they want to get that one.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And then, so the other one is the calcium channel blocker. And this again is used for like high blood pressure. So there's, and I don't really know the rhyme or reason, and that's not the point of tonight's show of why and when we use these yet. This is an important one to kind of understand of the mechanism to take. I think this is probably one of the more popular. This calcium blocker is one of the more popular high blood pressure medication uses here. So this is why they block calcium, and this is important to understand, because there's a reason that calcium is the number one mineral in the human body. Like it does so many things. So it blocks it from getting into the bloodstream and upregulated into the heart. So calcium creates really strong muscle contraction. Okay. That's what its job is. So for some people, if I have like someone who works in the farm, or they're a roofer, they're working in construction, they're sweating all day long, they literally will sweat out sodium and calcium, it'll just deplete it. So I can give them calcium because I'm balancing out those electrolytes again, and they'll feel stronger. The reason they use it in high blood pressure, because in high blood pressure, your heart is contracting very hard, very strong. In that muscle contraction, that's what calcium is used for. So if you deplete the calcium, you block it from getting to the heart, it doesn't pump as hard. It doesn't put the pressure as high. So this is a wonky way. And again, I'm not telling people to get off it, but understanding this helps us understand the big picture here of what takes place. So it's not uncommon. People that are on the calcium blockers are fatigued, because that means their other muscles are not contracting either. Because, and not 100%, they're a little bit different, but the same thing. We're depleting calcium from getting into the serum back in, into the heart. So what do we do about this? There is a supplement I use. So not even a calcium supplement here, which is 100%. You certainly could. And again, I'm not trying to replace medications. So what they do, if you were to Google, like, what is the effect of a calcium blocker, Karen, it's what they call vasodilation. They open up the artery just so it flows easier. So if they take the strength, it's almost like me having a headlock on somebody, and you get rid of all my calcium, the headlock gets weak and wimpy. That's essentially what the calcium blocker is doing, is making the heart kind of weak and wimpy, and it vasodilates more. we use something called vitamin G, Cataplex D. I'm sorry, G.
Okay.
And we use this in a couple of different, there's one called Cardio Plus, phenomenal, or something called Cataplex G. It's kind of cool. This vasodilates. It's in the B family, but it relaxes the muscle. So it opens things without depleting anything. We're actually adding instead of taking away. So we're helping the body vasodilate by calming down, creating kind of a natural, like synergistic harmony within the body. And I love it. It's so simple. What's really cool about it, so it literally tastes like dirt, a little bit like liver. It's a whole food source again. So for my peeps that say, well, like a blood pressure spiked and they're monitoring it, I have them take 4, 5, 6 tablets, chew them up. It doesn't taste good. And then almost literally often within minutes, we'll see that blood pressure regulate, which is pretty cool. And again, not a drug, not forcing anything. It's literally a natural vitamin that the body can utilize to help create vasodilation. So pretty cool in that scenario.
Yeah, that's awesome. And you can take these ones that we're recommending, you can take like Cataplex G with your high blood pressure meds, right?
Yeah. So, and again, it's not my job to take anyone off, but when people are really saying, doc, if I was going to try to get off this medication, what's a safe and effective way to do it? So we still want to create the vasodilation effect. So we give them these to start taking. And then sometimes what may happen if they're taking both, the blood pressure drops too low.
Yeah. Wow.
Right. And then, but it's okay. It's, we're still safe.
They can go back to their doctor, have a discussion about what their blood pressure is looking like. What's the next step for them in terms of the medication pathway?
Yeah. Yeah. And the beauty of it, it's safe. It will not trigger it and force it to stay low. Literally, it will, your body will burn it up like any other food or nutrient. And then your body's going to go back to whatever it was doing before. But if you can, most blood pressures here, I think here's the big interesting thing about all of this. Karen, most blood pressure is a nutrient deficiency to begin with a lack of sleep and stress. That is across the board where high blood pressure comes from. Nutrient deficiency, not enough sleep, and too much stress. And that is what ultimately, for the majority, the 90% plus, is that's where most of the high blood pressure comes from. All right, so those are for the most part. That's the collective group of high blood pressure medications. So we're talking about making sure that we have ample amounts of potassium in our body, making sure that we're getting good electrolytes. The other problem here with the challenge with the calcium blockers is that if it blocks out potassium. So potassium. So if you're on a calcium blocker and you're on an ACE inhibitor, now you have sodium and potassium. And that's 2 of the top 5. Yeah. And those are electrolytes that are critical for heart health. So we got to make sure that we, allow our body to naturally bring those back into the body.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay, cool. All right. So they're the group of blood pressure medications. What should we move on to next? We were talking earlier about steroids. How about steroids?
Let's go there, because that's such a common, popular tool that's used out. That's what we'll call it, a tool.
Yeah.
So, there's several things. One, we're going to understand the mechanism of just a little bit of how the steroid works. And, this prednisone and all those guys, they're going to inhibit the immune system. They're going to downregulate the immune system. They basically they tell the immune system to stop acting the way you're acting. They're like, bad on you. Like, don't do that. You're overacting, you're overreacting, whatever it may be. So we try to inhibit it. And again, I understand why we use it sometimes as a bridge. Sometimes, unfortunately, that bridge becomes a very long bridge, and we don't want that to happen, because the longer we're on it, the more deficiencies we create. So these are the challenges with steroids: calcium, potassium, zinc, vitamin D, and selenium.
Wow. Okay.
Calcium and potassium, primaries when it comes to electrolytes. So if you go on those long enough, you are going to create fatigue issues. You potentially create an imbalance in the heart muscle and make the body work harder. So that's some fundamentals. Calcium, critical for many things, regulating, temperature in the body. But a key one here, Hun, is selenium.
Yeah.
Yeah, if we inhibit selenium, which we don't need much of, but we absolutely positively need it, very, very important. I wish I had like a live audience now. I could be like, who can tell me why? Um, what is selenium so incredibly important for? I'm going to come back to that. So if you guys are quick typers, why is selenium so important for the human body? What gland, what tissue, what organ relies on selenium to do its job completely? And we'll circle back to this in just a moment. So we talked about calcium, and many of you know that calcium plays a massive role in the overall immune system. It is a first defender. It's the very first thing that defends the cell. So this is when we talk about downregulation. It also inhibits the absorption of vitamin D into the lipid layer. That's a bummer right there. We just spent an entire year. So that is why, Karen, this year, there are doctors and practitioners like me and many others that when people got COVID and they went to their doctors and they loaded them up on these steroids, we were shaking our heads like, no, please don't. No, not that. Because now you're giving the virus a direct line to get past your defense mechanisms. You're shutting down C, you're shutting down calcium, you're shutting down vitamin D. Like that is a big part of the defense mechanism. So we want to make sure that these things are timely. So did anyone answer that question about selenium?
We've got some Thyroid is our guest in the chat.
Yeah, amen. Yeah, well done.
Go team. We had a few of you doing Thyroid in the chat, so nice work.
So this is the interesting part. So we go on, a steroid, and some people are on it long term, and we have this downregulation of the immune system, and then we inhibit the ability for your thyroid to make things like thyroxine, like T4 and T3. And now we have a sluggish immune system and a sluggish metabolism. That's not setting the stage for, leveling up. That's a challenge right there. So recognizing that there's going to be deficiencies here. And again, if you got to go on it, I know people that are on prednisone daily, like it's an everyday medication for them. This is where we have to play the and world. And listen, and if you go on it for, a couple of days because you had something or something was going on, still got to level up. You're shutting your system down. There's no reason, with how we understand the way the body works, that you wouldn't want to supplement it and kind of like swing it back into your favor, get that pendulum to swing back. So
what supplement would we want to take?
Something like this, quite frankly, in this scenario, that Catalin would probably be the best blanket coverage. Catalin is our whole food multivitamin because it has all of that stuff. I'm not sure if I don't think it has selenium in it, but it does have a little bit of zinc, does have a little calcium, potassium. It has all the fundamental nutrients, and it'll be easy to absorb. And that's the other challenge as well. We got to make sure if you're going to take those supplements that you are taking something that your body's very bioavailable, very, very easy for the body to absorb. Again, selenium in that scenario, like, listen, maybe you never eat Brazil nuts, but maybe if you end up on like a steroid, you've got to get it into your body, and you got to make sure your gut health is going good as well, because you're shutting down a lot of other processes. Then it's the after effect. Well, like I went on this, and we often don't put the math together. Like you go on a steroid on the first of the month and you're on it for 5 days. And then 30 days later, it's so far apart that we're not really putting that math together of why, like, you're a little sluggish, you're not feeling as good, your hormones a little bit out of balance, but there's always that link. There's no free passes. So, if any opportunity we have to level up and we know that these deficiencies are taking place, now it's just easy to just kind of like, plug those in, even if they're just staying on them for 30 days and then get back to a good, God's garden diet, then oftentimes that'll be enough.
Awesome. Okay. And we're putting these, as we talk about some of these supplements, we're putting them in the chat, guys, so that you can grab those links if you want to. All right. So that's steroids. We got a few more to get through. What should we move on to next?
Let's go to what I think has become the number one medication in our country. Yeah, and that's thyroid meds.
Yeah, isn't that? Yeah, crazy.
Yeah, like different lists will show you different things, but it's like it's overcome like cholesterol meds, which we'll talk about in just a moment. That'll be the next one.
We will. Yeah.
Meds, Synthroid, levothyroxine, the whole group right there. And Man, the thyroid, listen, the thyroid's an important gland. Like if I was to summarize what the thyroid gland does, it is in charge for our overall metabolic system. That's really what it's doing for the body. It is in charge of just kind of keeping things revved up. So if we interfere with it, now, so many people, when our energy goes low, we blame it on a thyroid, and we're going to do an entire show just on the thyroid because it's literally become a bigger and bigger issue. And it's a big issue because it involves everything from the water, the fluoride, all these pesticides and herbicides. Everything is going to get part of what thyroid does. It filters blood. So it's getting everything that your body's that's coming into your body, the thyroid's interacting with. But its job is to keep the motor running. And if its job is so hard, it gets tired and it kind of wears out. The challenge here is this with these. So, and this is, I think I kind of mentioned this the other night. We were talking about thyroid just for a moment. The two big things that it inhibits when we're on those thyroid medications is iron and calcium.
Okay.
So, yeah, and you're a woman. So listen, aren't those things those are red alerts for you your entire life?
We're already low all the time. I struggle to ever have iron levels that aren't low, ever, in any test I've had. And how many women are on thyroid medications? Obviously, you're saying it's the highest thing, but it probably, is it more common in women? I don't know if that's just from my point of view, but it seems to be.
I would say clinically, I've never really looked up the stats, but I would just say just across the board, I'd probably say I'd probably say 75% of people
It seems to be yeah.
The other thing, so then think about what happens when you're deficient in iron and how these mimic each other. When a woman is low in, if they're borderline anemic or they have anemia, they lose energy. So it's
totally, yeah.
The same, this is the exact same thing. So we want to make sure. Now, again, not a huge fan. So everyone, let's be clear here. If you're on thyroid medications, I don't want you running out and just getting these big old horse iron pills. That's not the idea here. And again, because the thyroid medications, really what happens is it inhibits the receptor site that is called ferritin to receive the actual iron. So it's not about just pumping more iron. It's making sure that the receptor site is healthy so you can do it. So in that one, Karen, it's real simple. I use something called Ferrofood. It's a plant-based. It does have iron in it, but more importantly, it's going to help that receptor, that ferritin receptor, literally just 1 or 2 in the morning, and that's all we need. And it's super borderline healthy for all cycling women, period. Just because the majority of women are borderline anemic. Yeah.
Yeah, seems to be just from talking to people. And so you're saying everybody can go on this supplement. You don't have to check your iron levels or anything.
No, you don't. And that's the beauty of it, because it's plant-based and it's going to come synergistically. And this is so important for everyone to hear. Listen, iron's still a metal. Anyway, shake it down. So, and we're not supposed to have massive amounts of iron in the body. So when we take these big iron pills, it's no wonders that, people have issues with constipation and gut issues. So that's not how I do it clinically. Maybe some others do it that way, but that's not how we provide iron. We provide slow doses over time, helping the receptor site receive, and then also making encouragements dietary, so we lean back into the foods that, quite frankly, most women lean away from: red meat, dark meat, chicken, dark meat, turkey. Most just don't eat those things, and that's going to be your best sources of iron and B12s, which are usually go hand in hand there. So, so dietary, awesome, but typically in this scenario, if you're medication supporting your ability to absorb iron, smart idea.
Okay, and calcium was the other one.
Yeah, and
supplement, or we just
supplement again, because it's going to inhibit our absorption. And there's 2 ways we absorb, and I don't get too deep or confusing for people. So when we have calcium in the bloodstream, we want it in the blood, but we want it in the tissue or the bone. So we want it in different areas, and different nutrients are going to help that happen. So the calcium blocker inhibits it from getting in, circulating into the blood, keeps it in the tissue. But there's challenges here. We can get inadequate amounts or buildup of calcium. So again, no big, massive calcium pills. It's not that. We want a super, super bioavailable, readily available type of calcium that breaks down easy in the gut. My favorite is something called calcium lactate. You can take pill form. I've been moving clinically more and more toward powder form. It's basically all the pills just crushed up.
Yeah.
And you can put it in, yogurt. You can put it in your smoothie. You can put it in water. You can put it in your electrolyte drink. And that's what I really like it. And when you have that at home, because that was part of, we did many episodes, we did kind of your home, health medicine cabinet.
Yeah, we did. Yeah.
And the calcium lactate is number one because you use calcium to do things like fight infection. You use it to fight fevers. And if you have it available and you just like send us dose it up to this level. And this is the number one fighter. This is the thing that you put into your body. If you got a fever, if you're fighting off an infection, we use calcium.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay. So we've added those links in too. All right. So that's thyroid medications. What about, cholesterol meds, statins?
Yeah. Cholesterol. So this is huge. This is, clinically, this is a conversation that's probably happening just about every time I'm in clinic.
Yeah.
It just, I really, the more I've been doing this, more I've analyzed and more I really dive deep into cholesterol levels. I think I think we've kind of, the old school way of thinking in it wasn't really super awesome. And more people are understanding that there's more than just the overall number. So right now, Karen, that number sits at the total cholesterol number sits at 200. I literally have people that have come into my office and said, I'm at 203. My doctor put me on a cholesterol medication.
That's the number that's normal doesn't have to be normal for every single person. Like, look at us. We're all different. We're from different cultures. We've got different genetics. We've got different, I know we have to have these benchmarks, but that's just crazy. Like 203 might be normal for that person rather than 200 being normal for that person. Right? Like when I hear things like that, I can't help it. It's I don't know, like we are all different. We have to have some sort of way of looking at the whole person. Like, does this person have any other symptoms? Is this person healthy otherwise? Is this person, have a look at them as a person rather than 203. Let's put you on statins for the rest of your life. Anyway, I'm not a practitioner opinion.
Yeah. You're spot on there. And especially with that number, because there's so many other things for us to look at. The challenge is that this is like number 2 medication in our entire country.
Yeah. I
think right now it's hovering. All the stats I was looking at, and again, I'm taking out like the Vicodin, like the pain meds. And then it was going like cholesterol. And that's all the statins. That's all the, all of them, the Zocor, all of them, just all that category right there. So here's the thing. This is what's super, super important for us all to understand. So when we do that, the number one nutrient that gets blocked and inhibits the body from making. So our body makes a lot of vitamins and minerals. We make B vitamins. We make so many different things. The number one thing that it inhibits is something called CoQ10. We already talked about this one. Yeah. And listen, this is kind of ironic in a weird way because CoQ10, it protects the heart.
Yeah.
And inhibits the body from making CoQ10. That's weird. That's weird. So
not what you want, really.
Yeah. So what's kind of interesting, and I don't know this for certain, but I know that in a lot of other countries, and I think even Canada, which is right next to us, it is a practice for the doctor who gives the statin medication to also give a script for CoQ10, knowing the body would be, deficiencies created there. So that it's one of these ones that's super, super important. So this, if this is the only thing everyone's listening tonight, everyone listening here knows of somebody that is on a cholesterol medication. You probably know 5 people and don't even know they're on it. The other thing would be like, oh, well, they're on it. They won't have heart disease. No, the truth is, and mark my words, and this is what the research shows, you're not any safer from dying from heart disease if you're on a cholesterol medication. That's a different, a different weird conversation for another time. But so those people, one of the reasons they're not safer, part of it could certainly be is because they're inhibiting the number one thing that protects the heart. It's called CoQ10. So we can get CoQ10. It's really easy. I use a product called Thor. They do a phenomenal job. If you're using standard process already and you have access, get something called Cellular Vitality. It's probably a better product, quite frankly, because it's synergistic, but you got to take 6 of them because you need 200 milligrams a day. And if you're on a statin, you take it every single day. But this is how we do it, Karen. We're on a medication, down-regulates, and then we balance it back out by knowing this kind of stuff here. So I'm not telling you to come off your cholesterol medication. I think it's worthy of making sure that you're getting a good panel and having your doc up to date on how to read that panel. Make sure your ratios are comfortable and all that good stuff. If your triglycerides are high, get away from fast food. Like, get away from the sugar. You know, it's for the most part. I see a lot of people that have healthy, speaking of different people, different things. A couple of years back, there's a phenomenal study about German women. They have some of the highest cholesterol markers in the world, and they have like the lowest rate of heart attack and heart deaths in the world. So it's like,
wow.
Yeah. So like, just to your point, these are like ballparks. Like, we're just going to shoot in a target here, but let's make sure we step back and just kind of look at the whole thing, because not everyone falls into the same category especially when we talk about levels like that.
Yeah, sure. Love that. Okay, cool. So they were statins, done thyroid meds. What do you want to move on to next? There's a couple more we want to cover.
Let's do birth control.
Yes. Let's do birth control. It's another one that people are on for a long time, decade.
Yeah.
Or more.
Big one. And check out all this stuff. All right. So number one, and I'm going to go back to this in just a moment, is it creates a deficiency in folic acid. I'm going to go back to that. Huge. Well, I'll talk about that first. Like, so if you don't know anything about folic acid, here's what we need to know. Folic acid is responsible for producing and maintaining new cells. So that's important, right? Like, so we hear a lot about folic acid for pregnant moms, making sure that
huge. Your normal doctor will make sure that you're on it.
100%. Birth control inhibits and downregulates your ability to absorb and utilize folic acid. So I'm going to repeat again, what does folic acid do? And it makes you think, man, should I be taking folic acid? So folic acid literally helps produce and maintain new cells. It produces them. Which is, this is important. So here's the other thing, Karen, that it does is that folic acid also will help the body strengthen and maintain DNA structure. And I want to explain why this is important, because if we cannot maintain DNA structure, that is what a cancer cell loves.
Yeah.
So I want you to listen. I don't want to scare anyone away from taking birth control, but it is not a free pass, not by any means. So many things happening in the female body on these oral contraceptives. And I don't think, from my experience right now at 24 years, I don't think any of the doctors that are recommending them for any of the reasons that they do, birth control, acne, whatever it is, weight gain, feeling good, feeling bad, I don't think they have any idea of the side effects, because they're long-term side effects. When we talk about nutrient deficiencies, it's a slow go, but when you go, you go. So folic acid is one of the deficiencies. That's just one of them.
And do we supplement with that one? What should we do for folic acid?
Just a moment, but really that one it's folic acid with B12.
Okay.
That's good. And there's a way that we're going to wrap all these guys together.
Oh, okay.
B1, B3, B5, B6, B12, all of them depleted. Yeah. What when someone's depleted in B vitamins? And that's the question. I'll tell you what happens. You get tired, and when you get crave
energy.
Yes. So this is where people become sugar and carbohydrate addicted, because of depletion of B vitamins. Now, listen, if and never mind, like we can make our own B vitamins in our body. We get all these nutrients in, your body can make them, which is pretty darn cool. But we have to have good health for that, good gut health for that. But if we're inhibiting the way that our body can even make these B vitamins, and you can't make them, and you're always like you're not making enough B vitamins to get into to produce ATP and all that kind of stuff, you're going to look outside sources of energy, and that's sugar and carbohydrates. That's why I see so many women carb addicts. They may know better to not be a sugar addict, but that 10 years of being on birth control completely manipulated the way that they absorb their B vitamins or even make them. And now they're addicted to carbs. So my favorite for this really is going to be something called Cataplex B. That, and you can get like a gluten-free product, version of that through standard process, and a fair amount of them, like literally start your day off with 4 of them. And that's going to help you get balance back out. So not an option. Well, not, I guess it's always an option, but I would encourage, if you're on birth control, and listen, I get it. Maybe you don't want to get pregnant. Maybe it's worth all the deficiencies, whatever. So that we folic acid, B vitamins, vitamin C.
Yeah.
I don't need to say too much about vitamin C, but also zinc.
Yeah. These are all ones that, as you said, we've been talking about all year.
All year long. Magnesium, another one. This is staying asleep at night. This is having good muscle and nerve control. This is sleeping and pooping. These are all important ones. And then another one, selenium.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which
so these all that I just mentioned there: folic acid, B1, B3, B6, B12, zinc, vitamin C. What was the last one I mentioned there? Selenium, magnesium, all of those were just from birth control. And it is that process of taking pill after pill after pill after pill. And when the doctor does so, and I don't think I'm just going to go on the side of being polite and say, I don't think they're telling you that there's no side effect anymore. I think there always is. And maybe it's not their responsibility to tell you this. Listen, the only reason I know this is because this is what I do. You know what I mean? This is what I do every day. I don't know drugs like they do, but I look at the results, and I look at, the people in my office on a regular basis, or I look at the patterns and the habits. It is crystal clear to me, and there might be other influences here, that young women on birth control crave carbohydrates. How do I know that? I've been practicing for 24 years. Find me another practitioner who will tell you the same damn thing. If you're a woman, like you would probably agree with me. You're like, yeah, I do crave my carbs that whole time I was on the pill. So there's that frequency that takes place, and it's because the body's inhibited on making and producing some of the key vitamins that are used for energy in the human body. So this is one of the simplest things that can help us, because a lot of women are going to use birth control. I get it. And again, I do not want you to be shamed. I don't want you to get pregnant because of things I say today. Just recognize that, having a good supplement regimen to counterbalance some of these things, that's how we level up.
Yeah, I love it. And I mean, that's what we're saying with all these medications, right? We're just talking about things to add in if you're taking them. We're not telling anyone to change up what they're doing. Just be aware. Knowledge is power. Once they know that some of these things might be happening, you can take action. You can take some of these supplements to, at least if you do have to take medication or you want to take medication, you're doing it in the healthiest way possible for your body, right?
Yes, 100%. You got
it. Awesome. All right. So that's birth control. What about antibiotics?
No doubt. So, we talk a lot about antibiotics here. Mostly we talk about it in relationship to gut health. And of course, it's going to inhibit, its biggest thing. Of course, it breaks down gut flora, beats up our microbiome, and all that kind of stuff leads to leaky gut, all of those things. But just from a nutritional perspective, let's say you don't have any of those things. A couple key things are going to happen on the antibiotics. One, go back to the B vitamins. All B vitamins across the board are going to be inhibited. So in the event you went on them, and this is, again, anyone who's practicing, men or women that are doing what I'm doing here, you watch this pattern, it's clear as day. You go on antibiotics and the person's like, no, I'm fine. They don't affect me. Give it 30 days. The carbohydrate craving happens. Why? B vitamin deficiencies.
Yeah, wow.
Again, so all B vitamins will be disrupted, and it really happens in the gut. Karen, we make a lot of B vitamins. So you don't, people are like, well, I don't take any B vitamins. Do I have them? Yeah, you do, because your gut makes them with all the other nutrients. But once we disrupt that gut flora, that microbiome, now we can't make them properly. And then again, when we don't have the energy, the tools to make the energy from within, then we start going to the outside. And we think, well, energy is going to come from out here. And I reach for a snack here and a piece of bread there, and give us a little bump, because that's a conversion of just converting it into sugar. So a little bit bummer there. Here's another little side effect one, vitamin K.
Okay.
Yeah. So a little known, we don't talk a lot about vitamin K, but real important in its role of, and its ability to help clot blood, and very important, it's one of the fat soluble vitamins, A, D, E, and K. So they don't need a ton of them, but play a very critical role. That group right there in immune health. It has a very synergistic and very important role in how it interacts with vitamin D. So again, if we inhibit this one, so these are the subtleties here. You go on an antibiotic, and then somewhere down the road, your vitamin D levels are lowering. You're not doing anything different. You're living in Florida, you're out in the sun, but you see those D levels go down and down. To me, as a clinician, I wonder, is this one of the reasons that we see across the board widespread vitamin D deficiencies? Or I'm not talking like some people. I'm talking 9 out of 10 people that I do lab work on are deficient in vitamin D. And because, there's always a history in a lot of people of using antibiotics here and there, and then it could be the deficiencies of vitamin K. So it certainly could play a role there. So again, if we know that, and we know that going on in the antibiotics, of course, we'll go on a probiotic because it crushes all our probiotics. It crushes our enterobiotics as well, which is like the soil-based probiotics. So it kind of crushes all those guys. So going on a good, healthy probiotic as soon as can be. I use one if someone goes on an antibiotic and they, hey doc, listen, blah, 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 went on an antibiotic, I'm on it right now. I give them something called Zymex. It's a probiotic that they can take simultaneously, and it won't interfere with the effects of the antibiotic, but it helps the gut right away start to do its job, so we can, make those B vitamins, absorb those B vitamins, and hopefully stay in balance with our vitamin K and vitamin D. So again, super, super important one, not just because of its impact on gut flora, but absolutely with all those B vitamins and especially vitamin K. Yeah.
And love that. It's good to have something that you can take, because as we've talked about before, sometimes there are times for antibiotics, but there's definitely effects on the body. All right, that's antibiotics. Which one do you want to tackle next?
Let's talk about estrogen for a moment.
Okay.
Yeah. So, estrogens in hormone replacement therapy.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and estrogens could be in what else? Where else do we find estrogens? I can't quiz you, can I?
You can quiz me. I just might not pass the quiz. Come on, guys, help me out in the chat.
Yeah,
what else do we get estrogens in?
We just talked about one that has estrogen in it.
Oh, like birth control, you mean?
Yeah.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
So the educator or teacher in me then says, and then what do we learn about birth control? What is one of the things that it creates a deficiency? And the first thing was
everything.
B
vitamins, folic acid.
There
we go.
Yeah. A big overlap here in estrogen. So, and the reason I wanted to bring this up in this way, Karen, because typically we think of birth control, younger women, estrogen, older women.
Yeah. Okay? Yeah.
But
it's really
not as young. Yeah. Yeah. So, but let's go over this, because again, I want to go back to the folic acid when I said there's 3 primary purposes of what folic acid serves the body. It helps us produce new cells, it helps maintain those cells, and it keeps the integrity of the DNA. We all know, no doubt, over 50% of the female cancers are estrogen positive. Yeah. At least in my clinic, that's what I see. So if we're taking estrogen and we are inhibiting the ability for our bodies to absorb folic acid, which is responsible for keeping the DNA intact so it doesn't get overwhelmed by some other mutant type of cell, a non-harm, something out of harmony here. If we don't have that, that's when cancer can happen readily. Yeah. So this is where nutrition does play a huge role in understanding that if we're going to take something like that, we're using estrogens as hormone replacement therapy. And if you are, I'm telling you, you got to do your lab work every 3 months. You're not allowed to get high. You got to go through all that. This is a pain in the butt to do that, and making sure you're monitoring those things. Your estrogen levels. And again, if you're 50 plus, your estrogen levels aren't supposed to be super high. They're supposed to be kind of low. There's a reason for that. So in the event that you are on estrogens, know that all of your B vitamins, folic acid, zinc, and magnesium are all going to be inhibited. So therefore, which, you know, if most of the women that are listening here, if you're one of my clients, there's a strong possibility that I already have you on magnesium. You're on zinc, right? Because B vitamins are just going to happen. Either you're going to take them or you're consuming a lot of egg yolks, because that's a great source of B vitamins. So we're replenishing a lot of these. The folic acid, if you take, there's something called folic acid B12 that we use, perfect in these scenarios for the ones that are on, oral contraceptives or estrogen. So again, not even having the conversation if they're good or bad for you, but rather recognizing the deficiencies that are taking place when you are on them on a regular basis.
We have a question here about folate. About folate and folic acid. I was told to take folate, not folic acid. Do you think it matters? Is there a difference? No,
ultimately your body can convert that. So the folate is a version. I believe that's a little bit more of a whole food like it's going to be in its full. It might be a little harder to break down. No big deal, but absolutely it's fine. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome.
Karen, with the folic acid, if I've got this correct, I might have this flipped upside down, but I think the folic acid, it's almost as if it's broken down one extra step. So it's a little easier to absorb, but folate probably is more synergistic in the whole food source. So it's perfectly fine.
Okay. Awesome. Cool. Okay. So they're estrogens. What about NSAIDs, over-the-counter pain medications?
Yeah. That's obviously a big one. So,
because a lot of people, including myself in the past, have taken those very regularly without really thinking that it's impacting my body at all.
Yeah. And interesting enough, I think this is one that also people people don't ever notice it, but then I think people often will be like, whoa, that tears my gut up.
It also creeps up. Like I'll be like, oh no, I don't take Tylenol that often. And then I'm like, oh, actually, no, I've been taking it like a couple of times a week. Oh, I've actually it kind of, you sometimes don't think you're taking it that often, but you're actually starting to take it a little more than, yeah.
This is a real important one because this is super high up there. When we think of aspirin, we think, oh, no big deal, right? And, ibuprofen, Aleve, we're just going to kind of push all those guys into the non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs. No big deal, right? They're just over the counter. Anyone can buy them. They come in jars of like 200, 500, whatever. So if you come in that many, you must need to take a lot of them. I don't know. The truth is they wreak havoc. And I forget the statistic, but they're like, man, I think that NSAIDs are in the top 10 leading cause of death in our country.
What? Is that crazy?
It's ultimately, and again, I'm not really here to talk about the side effects tonight, but what happens is it breaks down the lining of the belly and you can't absorb nutrients. But that's why we are here tonight. And so really, again, let's go through these. And so there's repeat taking place here. Some of the big ones, vitamin C, and I don't really have to cover, but why is vitamin C? So this is real interesting. So I will talk about vitamin C, even though I thought I didn't have to. Vitamin C, part of it is in ascorbic acid, and that ascorbic acid works as an acidifier for the body. It's a great preservative for a lot of foods. So it's really a good thing. But also the complex vitamin C is even more important. And that's all the other enzymes, all the other nutrients that make it into an enzyme activated into the body. And that's really what we want. We want these whole food enzymes. Mm-hmm. And what happens when we are deficient in that, we'll see things that break down, things like our skin and the inability to absorb things like collagen or rebind tissue. So when we have like a depletion or an inability to absorb the whole food vitamin C, the challenge there is we will create skin issues. That issue shows up first in the gut. Like you can get burnt. The reason there's so often we'll see, unfortunately, NSAIDs leading to causes of death is because it creates stomach ulcers. And that stomach lining is very similar to our dermis on our outside of our skin. It's in the same family, so it burns it up. So that's number one. We have a deficiency of vitamin C, folic acid. We've learned a little bit about folic acid tonight. Its primary purposes is to make new cells. So this is not really something we want to be really deficient in. Make new cells, maintain those cells, and make sure that we keep the integrity of the DNA within the cell. Because if that integrity breaks down, opportunistic cells, things like cancer, things like viruses want to sift in there. They want to grab onto that host and wreak havoc on your body. So we really don't want to just ignore the fact that we're becoming deficient in folic acid. So that's another one that's really important. Iron, another significant one. We talked about that earlier, especially for women in energy. What happens when we're taking the NSAIDs? Part of what happens is it inhibits the strength of our pH. That's where the key is here, meaning that we're supposed to have a really strong acid in the gut. That aspirin breaks that down. Our pH rises, and we can't break things down like zinc and iron. So that's another one. Vitamin C, zinc, iron, folic acid, all of these, when we take aspirins, and I think there's a couple others, B12, of course, is going to be there, iron, I said, and then just the ability in general. So this is another one. And this is where I think we see a lot of people start to lean away from what could be super healthy God's garden type food like red meat. When you take aspirin over time, you will lose your ability to break down proteins and amino acids, especially animal proteins. And why the animal proteins? Because especially things like red meat, Karen, just a reminder, I literally every single week that I practice, someone will tell me, I'll ask them, how you doing? You taking care of yourself? You taking, you doing the basics? How's your nutrition? And they'll say, I'm doing really good, doc. I've decided to stop eating red meat. And I always, okay, yeah. How come? Is it just not feel good? You love cows. What's the gig? And to me say, well, I've been noticing it just doesn't feel right anymore. That's my wife, like, she loves cows. There's no chance, like, and pigs and stuff like that. So like, that's where her brain goes. Like, but she understands those nutrients are important for her. Yeah. The moment I hear someone say, just doesn't feel good anymore, it's a red flag. Yeah. It means, unfortunately, you are not breaking down the collagen that is in that red meat, and it's disrupting your body. Because chicken doesn't have that much collagen relative to red meat. Eggs don't have that much collagen relative to red meat. So when I hear that, I think, uh-oh, we got to watch out here. And then, of course, we're going to find more B12 in those animal products as well. So we'll see deficiency in that as well. So, we look at this, and it's very, very common, Karen. Like, so, and again, I'll see this in a lot of my females. Do I think the females take a little bit more aspirin, a little bit more Aleve than the men do? I'd say clinically the answer is yes. Why? Yeah. Because you have these cramps, these cycles, these abnormal symptoms, these PMS symptoms once a month. You're uncomfortable, and you find that these give you some relief, and they get you through those 4 or 5 days. Yeah. But this cycle happens over and over and over again, month upon month, year upon year. And next thing you know, you inhibit your ability to break down red meat. Yeah. Absorb selenium, folic acid, and all these things. And then, so let's just say that you take a little bit of asprin, you got yourself, an oral contraceptive over there, like we start stacking. Yeah. Guys.
Yep. Oh, guilty. Yeah, totally.
Typically healthy young person, middle-aged person, whatever it may be. And these little seem so innocent, and they're innocent because you do them out of good faith and intention. Yeah. On the wrong side of it. And again, that is why, I really wanted to, like, as much as I could tonight, make health simple, where if we're taking one action that could have a little bit of a, like a not so good outcome, let's be aware of it. Let's be aware of that. We'll tackle it. Let's make sure we keep leveling the body up. Yeah.
No, I love it. All right. We've gone through a lot. We're almost out of time. Is there any other ones we want to make sure we touch on before we finish up?
I think there's any big ones.
Yeah, I think that's most of them. We've got a question here about allergy meds. Let's do that as the last one, then we'll finish up. Is allergy meds, Claritin, things like that, I guess?
Oh, so those Claritins, they're notorious for inhibiting vitamin C and zinc.
Okay.
Yeah. So which is kind of ironic, because what do we need for the immune system?
Vitamin C and zinc. Yeah. Crazy. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's it's an antihistamine effect that most of those are going to have. So they downregulate the liver a little bit. I would probably guess that there's also going to be deficiency in B vitamins, the more allergy medications we take, because we're putting so much emphasis on the liver in that category.
Yeah. Okay, cool. And we've already put links to those in the chat if you want to grab those ones. Right, cool. Well, I hope, that was super useful. Let's go into our last question. What is going to be our one action that our listeners can take to move them towards their goal of becoming superhuman?
I think it's real simple. It is, use our knowledge as power, and that means use it. So I love that statement that, knowledge is power. And I think it only really matters is when we're using it, and tonight it came off gentle enough and inviting enough that I absolutely and positively not scorning. I'm not telling you not to use medications or anything like that. And it's not even because I'm gentle, but like, do I use medications? I don't. I'm fortunate. Like, I'm not lucky. I'm fortunate because right now I don't need to. But I'm not like against or saying that there's not a place for them. Just like the vaccine, like that whole conversation, not anti-vax, like let's get smart. And if we are on medication, we're fool. And if someone tells you that it doesn't have any side effect or anything like that, you know better than that. Like we're smart at this point. So take more action, be bold, let your knowledge become power because you're using it. Yeah.
Yes, love that. And Kim's checked in the chat here. Thank you. I learned so much tonight. I always look forward to Tuesday nights with y'all. So that's awesome. We look forward to it too. So we will be back next week, same time, same place for another episode of the Health Made Simple show.
Yes, we will be back. And thank you guys, everyone, for showing up again. Keep doing the thing, keep sharing it out, keep spreading love. And as usual, we're going to take deliberate action for our mind, our body, overall wellness. You gotta be awesome.